Hi, this may not have been what you're expecting when you open this video. I'm sure I've uploaded a deceiving thumbnail. Anyway, where am I? I'm in my car, in my garage at my house. The reason I'm in my car is because it's pretty good acoustically, and I can sort of do whatever I want uninterrupted. And my partner doesn't have to worry about if I'm recording or not. She can kind of do whatever she needs to as well. And I recently finished recording my audio book, Patient Doctor Privilege, and I did that in this car. And yeah, it turned out reasonably well. I'm pretty happy with it. So that's why I'm in the car. I'm set up in here with some recording equipment and or podcast equipment, my laptop and laptop camera and a lamp. It's a little bit stuffy, so I might install a fan at some point. We'll see how we go to circulate the air, if you're wondering. Now, the reason I'm recording this video is because I launched my website a couple of weeks ago. Don't worry if you haven't heard about it. I haven't really marketed it or anything. One of the reasons I started the website is because I just wanted a place to advertise, or store information about what I think is important, and sort of push my own content. And if people want to buy my book or read a blog post or two. So the first blog post I put on the website is called "Does God Exist?" And just quickly, the reason I thought recording a video would be good is because there's lots of different mediums. People like different choices, and having something in written text and a video to support it to a certain extent is a good thing. I'm not going to go through the blog post point for point. This is kind of off the cuff. I don't have any visual cues or dot points, so we'll see where this takes me. Before I get too stuck into the blog post, I might as well just mention, this is a good habit. Just being able to speak openly and have no one listen. And the reason that it's a good habit is because it's a good way to vent, and it's a good way to structure your thinking and practice communication, which is a very useful skill, because a lot of the things in this world, if you don't practice communicating and you end up in a shitty situation, you can't actually describe how you feel or what's going on or get your point across, and it's easy to feel lost and confused without any sort of without sifting through what's going on in your mind, and just acting like an ant going from point A to point B. Things will happen in your life where you need to be conscious and aware and be able to effectively communicate what's going on, or even in the position of being in an emergency, just being able to speak and get things done and convince people of your perspective, which is not what I'm necessarily trying to do. I'm just trying to, find questions and find answers to them in my own way. And where things go is we'll just see what happens. So yeah, that's a little tangent there. So with this video, it supports my blog entry. I'm not going through the blog point for point. The first blog entry was called "Does God Exist?", which is a pretty hot topic. It got a pretty crazy, strange review on Facebook when I posted it, because a lot of people just see that title and didn't necessarily click on the link, which is sad news for me because nobody went to my website. But I was just reading the conversation in the threads under it was just pretty much the title and a picture, and it kind of opened the floodgates in a biblical sense to just a lot of people trying to get their point across in a pretty arrogant way and disproving other people's opinions. And I think there's a certain weight to either side of the discussion. Does God exist or doesn't God exist? Try to be open about what God is, whether it's a man, woman, thing, alien, I don't know. So yeah, it was a pretty mixed bag of people and mixed opinions, and nobody was really listening to each other. It was just a kind of, people were pulling all types of quotes and book references and just trying to dismantle people's belief systems. And and on the other side, people trying to convince others that of their belief system. So it was kind of a pretty mixed bag of responses. Now, it wasn't really what I was going for. I was going for a little bit kind of a different discussion, which was an exploration of things that I've been thinking about. Now, probably a good place to start is you often hear people say, if God exists, how can they allow so much suffering? And, that's a pretty good question, because a lot of people think of God as an intervening force. They'll pray to God to help them. They'll pray to God to make sure they, can harvest their wheat, whatever it might be. People ask God for things and they attribute their good luck or fortune to God intervening. Now, and it makes you wonder, if God is intervening in your life or answering your prayers, is God, why is God allowing so much suffering? And, that leads me to two other hot topics, which would be, one topic, fate versus free will. Now, I think fate and free will, which is kind of what I talk about in the blog post a little bit, is, on either side of your life, you've got a beginning and an end, and I think that's quite fatalistic. It's kind of beyond your control as far as we know it. You're born into this world and you die after a certain point, and if you told somebody you could do whatever you wanted in between there, but you would still end up at the same finish line and die, they would say probably that's quite fatalistic, that, it's beyond your control and it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. Now, I don't think that concept necessarily translates into between what's going on between when you're born and when you die. I think there's a fair amount of free will mixed in there. And the reason I think there's a lot of free will mixed in there is because there's just so much visible suffering. So whether you suffer from a mental illness like depression, or you've got an eating disorder, or you have a physical pain ailment, or you have relationship issues or family issues, all these things are different forms of suffering, and they're so evident. You can just look at a person's face sometimes and see if they're having a bad day. It's up to you whether you want to do something about that or help them, but it's quite obvious that there's a lot of suffering, and I don't think anybody would really argue that point. And you can impose a lot of suffering on yourself as well. Now, I think that being able to impose suffering on yourself, whether it's by making poor choices or making good choices to benefit others, that's a very good indication of free will, because if you are unable to experience suffering, I would say that would raise a lot of questions. But because there is so much suffering, I would say that there is a lot of suffering purely because there is free will. And then that kind of links back to the topic of, if I don't really think it's necessary to have a force or somebody like a God intervening in between that point A and point B, because there's just so much suffering. So I think if you were God or had a God complex, or you could intervene in people's lives, you probably would. And then in doing that, you'd take away free will, and then in taking away free will, you'd most likely take away suffering, because it would just kind of make sense in a very simple way. Now, where does that lead to? So there's God in one hand. We have these outside the scope is quite fatalistic, and in between is free will and suffering. And it's an interesting position to be in. And I'm not really trying to answer the question, does God exist? But I do end the blog post in saying that within our lifetime, or your lifetime, whenever that beginning and end might be, I don't really think it's necessarily to believe in God, because you often hear people talk about whatever holy text, that you go to heaven after you die and that's where you're judged. So one of the things that stuck out to me when I wrote it is I said that you're a vessel of your judgment. So judgments probably might not be the best word for it, but you carry with you your decisions to quite a detriment. People do things in their lives that haunt them forever. And who better to judge you at the end of your life than yourself? So, if God isn't intervening in your life on a day-to-day basis because there's so much suffering and you have free will to do as you please, and then they're not really in the best position to judge you at the end of your life, I think it's quite a healthy thing to, not really think about God's perspective on what you're doing too much, because in a certain way you are God in a very strange way, or so I think anyway. When you die, perhaps you are God in some form or another, and you judge yourself. And another interesting thing I was thinking about is I can't remember where I heard it. I think it was in a video I was watching, but someone was talking about how when you die, or before you come to Earth or you're born, you're given the option. You can live out, this existence filled with many great things and many terrible things, or you can stay in heaven with what I sort of coined it as is just true sight. So you see everything and feel everything, and there's no real pain or anything like that. You have the answers to everything, and you choose to come here. And when you choose to come here, you forget all that. You don't know the answers to the universe or the meaning of life or whatever hot topic you want to choose. You just come to Earth and you're an empty vessel, and then what happens, and then you, I don't know, you die and you go back and you think to yourself, well, that was a pretty hectic ride. I don't want to do that again. Or maybe there's something else you would like to experience. And I think that's kind of a healthy way to think about this whole predicament is, think about it in a way that it was your choice, not that God allowed it to happen or God created the universe, or, that I think that, you don't need to seek out suffering, but you will suffer inevitably. And the reason for that is because you have the free will to do as you please. And God isn't intervening as far as I can tell, because if they did, I think the world would be quite a different place. So, does God exist? I don't really think it's relevant while I'm alive. Perhaps at the beginning and end of my life it is. But right now, I think, that's how I'm kind of looking at the issue. And it was missed on social media. So this is my sort of, video recording interpretation of it. And there'll probably be, I don't know how regularly I'll do this. We'll see what happens. But if you are interested, you can go to my website, daveafulton.com, read the blog post, have a look at, the book that I've recently released. It's available on Amazon and at an Australian bookstore as well. It's called Patient Doctor Privilege by David A. Fulton. So I'll see you next time, whenever that is. I'm not going to make any promises. Cool. Catch ya.